Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm with Bob Vosseller at Space Out Central. Greetings, Bob. How you doing?
Doing great. Looking forward to our program tonight and talking Trek.
As am I. I'll be here if you need me.
Great. Chime in at any point because you're part of this legacy as well. That's
Thank
how we met. And tonight I'm here once again with my good friend and incomparable guest, Stephen Lance, who's got a long legacy with Star Trek. We will be celebrating the 60th anniversary together a little bit early than the September 8th anniversary itself, but on August 30th, of all places, the boardwalk of Seaside Heights, New Jersey, where we will have some stands and vendors on the boardwalk near the stage on Fremont Avenue. And then we will be screening a movie. We had originally hoped to have it as a Star Trek movie in honor of the 60th anniversary, but because of it's the 60th anniversary, those choices from the franchise were blocked out. So we did the next best thing. We picked a movie that was kind of a tribute to the Star Trek franchise, Galaxy Quest, which is a lighthearted kind of satire, but definitely a classic movie all to itself. So Quest will be that Sunday's entry into the Seaside Heights free movie beach series. So that will be part of the fun. So I think it's going to be a great night, and it'll be just one of several events that the USS Challenger, my chapter of Starfleet, is doing as we get closer to the actual anniversary. So we appreciate the Borough of Seaside Heights in partnership, helping us along with this and providing the venue. And Steve, of course, is going to be our featured star, having had a wonderful role, a small role, but still a good role in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. So he's always got plenty of stories to share, and looking forward to it. So thanks again, Steve, for joining me tonight and for being our big guest on August 30th.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's great to see you again, and Hercules. I thank you both. I think the last time I visited you was in January. Does that sound right,
I
Bob?
think so. Yep, it's
Yeah,
been a while.
and we did that in January because of my association with Star Trek, and to celebrate the 60th anniversary, I got involved with Star Trek. I think we'll go over some of the details for the new listeners. I was a kid in high school, and a friend of mine and I heard about Barry Presser, heard about a thing called the Star Trek Convention in 1973 in New York. That was actually the second one. The first one was in 1972. And we went there, and they had a costume ball. If anyone has ever gone to a parochial school, and if you are growing up in New Jersey, Monmouth County specifically, and know the Ranney School, which is where I went to high school, it's a tie and jacket school. Blue tie, blue blazer, gray pants every day. Well, Barry and I had no idea what to wear to this Star Trek convention. So we wore our school clothes and came with ties and jackets. And we got there, and it was, they had this costume ball, and people are dressed as, you know, Tellarites and Andorians and Vulcans and what have you. And if I thought, by the way, Bob, if this had been uh, a Hawaii Five-O convention, I might have won as McGarrett. I might have, but it wasn't. So I couldn't enter. So we couldn't enter the talent, the costume show. And then they said they had a talent show, and I didn't have anything prepared. But my friend Barry Presser, and if you're out there listening, and I know you are, Barry, said, Steve, why don't you do that stuff that you do at the lunch table in high school, in Ranney School? And I had already started to build one of those stand up in front of the brick wall, routines, but it
Mhm.
wasn't really polished. But I was doing the voices already. I was doing my William Shatner, my if we could, the way he hesitates. And I did my Mr. Sulu. Oh, I love doing Mr. Sulu, George, who I'm still in touch with, and he's just wonderful. George and Brad are so kind, and it's so nice to still have that relationship with them. And I think I sent you a picture. I recently hung out with Adam Nimoy. I tell you about that too.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then of course, I did the Mr. Sulu. Captain, it's getting a little chilly on the planet. Can you send out a pot of coffee on a long rope? And that's George. And then my favorite and my dear friend Scotty James Doohan. Like, I don't think we can do this. The engines are gonna blow, and I did these little bits and said funny stuff. It's part of a routine that actually got polished. So I'm at the convention doing just throwing out lines. I had no idea really what I was doing, just making stuff up as I went along, stuff that I had done in high school. And I ran out of stuff to say. I said, "Hey, thank you very much. Goodbye." And they were laughing and applauding, during my act. And I got off the stage and I said, we were seniors, by the way, in high school, I think at the time. I said, "Barry, I think I won." Well, the lady in charge said, "Sorry, Steve, we have to disqualify you." And I said, "Why? I didn't say anything dirty or anything wrong." She said, "No, no, no, it's a 3 minute," but I was killing out there, they were laughing. He said, "It's a 3 minute time limit. You went 6 minutes. We have to
Oh,
dis
that's
we
right.
have to disqualify you because there'll be pandemonium here if we give you a prize." And I said, "Well, why didn't you stop me?" And then the lady in charge, Elisa Rosenstein, said, "Because you were killing out there." And I said, "What?" She said, "You were really funny. People paid $6 to come to this show, and that's really how much it was, and you were entertaining them. So we can't give you a prize because there, would be a mayhem here because you went over the time. However, if you'd like, we'll have you back on next year's program." I said, "That's great." And I wanted the guests had these ribbons. I don't know if you can see. I don't have. They wore these ribbons that said guest, and I said, "I'm going to get a guest ribbon and I'm going to be in the show." They said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm going to get paid." "No, we can't pay you." So okay, but I'm going to have a guest ribbon. And I'm real excited because I'm going to be walking around with a guest ribbon. And later at that convention, Gene Roddenberry showed up to speak, and he didn't have a guest ribbon because everybody knew who he was. And George Takei, I don't think had a guest ribbon, and Jimmy Doohan didn't have one. James Doohan. And then I realized that it's better to not have a guest ribbon than to have a
Mm.
guest ribbon. So I'm going to have my guest ribbon at the next show. And I did my Star Trek routine. And they liked it and said this was 1974. And the promoter said, "We'd like to have you back next year again." And I said, "Am I going to get paid?" They said, "Well, no." And now I'm a freshman in college and I'm negotiating. So I said, "Well, look, you're not going to pay me. So I want to be everybody out there watching, Spaced Out Bob has been to a con. And they know that there's multiple things going on simultaneously. There's the film room, there's the dealer's room where all the memorabilia sold. There's the art show that has people selling the art that they've done from the series and maybe other science fiction. There in another room there might be a makeup artist or a special effects guy talking about behind the scenes. And then there's the big stage, whatever room that is, and that's where the stars come out. And in that room, there's a master of ceremonies who introduces them, and that's where all the news media is. That's where the newspapers, the radio stations, the TV stations are all there. And I said, "Okay, I'm not getting paid, but I want to be in the big room introduced by the master of ceremonies." And they said, "Okay, that's the deal." And I was excited. I was going to do it. I even did a Joe Franklin show before the convention to promote that I was going to be on the convention. So I was on the same Joe Franklin show before the Ghostbusters. Just
Joe Franklin was
have you
great.
seen where's Elvis and have you seen him lately? I think that was what Joe said to him. So I'm doing the show, and 2 weeks after that show, or 2 weeks before the convention, actually, I got a call from Al Schuster, who it was the fourth international, Al Schuster's fourth international Star Trek convention. And you can Google these things and find me. My stage name back then, by the way, folks, was Heesh, Heash. Has nothing to do with hashish, even though I was in Marijuana Minutes. It was a misspelling. It was a misspelling, a nickname I had at college, and it just stuck. And I had that at the early part of my career. And they called me up 2 weeks before, Bob. And I know you know this. We've known each other a long as oh, yeah, we can mix metaphors. I'm going to do Obi-Wan Kenobi from another science fiction show. He goes,
Yes.
"We've known each other, Bob, for a long time." That was Obi-Wan. And had it not, by the way, been for Star Wars, Star Trek would have never happened because Paramount kept turning down Roddenberry.
Yes.
And then when Star Wars came out, they said, "Oh, people are going to see science fiction again. Don't we own a science fiction project?" And Gene said, "Yeah, Star Trek." Okay, so they did that. So 2 weeks before the convention, they call me up. Isn't it great that it's a very Gene Shepard thing. I was good friends with Gene Shepard. He'll digress and then get right back to the beginning of the story. They called me up and said, "Steve, there's going to be a change. You're not going to be introduced by the master of ceremonies." I said, "Al, that was the deal. I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting a hotel room. I'm going to do my routine." And wait. The master of ceremonies, the comedian Chris Rush, who we had hired, quit at the last minute. Rumors, and I can't speak for Chris, but stories were that he heard about Star Trek fans and I think didn't want to be associated with us, and he quit doing the master of ceremonies job. We have nobody to host the show. We think everybody on the committee thinks you're funny. We're going to hire you, pay you, give you a hotel room, and you will not be introduced by the master of ceremonies. Now, Bob and Herc together, because you're going to
Be
be
the
the master
oh,
of ceremonies.
master.
I do this every time I'm on the air. It just the bigger the crowd, the more fun that is. I did a show called The Lounge Effect, which I'm going to be doing more of, and I had the whole crew was in the room when I did it. So we had like, 6 or 7 people all together saying, "Be the master of ceremonies." It was great. It was a lot of fun to do that. So uh, that's how I got involved. And from hosting that convention, they liked me, and I hosted the next one and the next one and the next one, sometimes 2 or 3 a year. So even though I did it for 8 years, I hosted more than a dozen conventions because in New York they would have twice a year, and then I did Philadelphia and Atlanta, Georgia. So I hosted close to 12 to 15 conventions in that 8 to 9 year period. And because of that, when they got the green light to make the first film, which they titled Star Trek: The Motion Picture, really went out of their way to think of a title. They called me up from Roddenberry's office, Susan Sackett, my dear friend to this day. And Susan said, "Stephen, we're doing the movie and we're doing a scene where we're asking extras to come in. And it's the rec deck scene, everybody knows. And if you'd like, we'd love to have you for what you've done to keep Star Trek alive during that period of time when Star Trek was canceled, between showing that there was a fan base out there that they could get the permission to, get the
Yeah.
green light from Paramount to make the film." So I went, and because I knew everybody when I got there, not just the actors, but I knew the special effects people and I knew the makeup, Freddie Phillips, Fred B. Phillips on screen, but Freddie, if you know him. And I went up to Freddie and I said, I want to be, I don't necessarily want my friends back in Freehold, New Jersey to recognize me. Even back then, my favorite actor was Boris Karloff. And Karloff looks different in every movie. So my life's goal as an actor was not to be Tom Cruise, who is Tom Cruise in every film,
Yes.
but for you to say, says in the credits it was Stephen Lance, but I didn't recognize him, and that's what I wanted. So I said, "Why don't you make me a Vulcan? I have black hair. I had black hair then, folks, by the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had black hair." So I said, "You can cut the bangs and cut the sideburns. So they sent me over to the barber shop and they just gave me a haircut not unlike this. My hair was very long at the time. I'll show you a picture. And
Mhm.
and they cut it into the Star Trek haircut. And I got my pointed sideburns and a nice haircut like the crew members were back in the 60s. And I said, great, I'm going to come back to Freehold and everybody's going to see my pointed sideburns. And I said, Freddie, can you make me a Vulcan? And Fred said, we have enough Vulcans for this scene, Steve. How'd you like to be a bumphead? And I said, what the hell is a bumphead? And Freddie said, you are, sit down. So I sat in the makeup chair. And the first thing they did was cut off my beautiful pointed sideburns.
Uh,
No, I didn't have that. The next thing was when I went out there, you'll see in the picture, I'll show you in a minute, I had a mustache because I love Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff had a mustache. I had to have a mustache. So I had a mustache. And the second thing was that they cut that off. And then they put on the prosthetic headpiece
mm,
that made me, they, at the re, when we were there on set, they called me a Vegan as we were from the planet Vega, which I think is owned by General Motors, GM, the Vegas. Anyway, later, years later, when the internet started with all these Star Trek websites, including the wiki, the big wiki, the Star Trek wiki, uh, Memory Alpha, I found out that I was actually a Ronda Wright crewman. Now, I unfortunately didn't get to go through the process that I wanted to, where they cast your head and make the mold and everything. That was done for Billy Van Zandt, and I want to give a shout out to Billy because he was cast as the new alien aboard the Enterprise because Nimoy was not going to do the picture. Leonard said, you're
mm.
selling little pictures of me. You're selling these Mego dolls, that's my likeness. And they didn't sign licensing deal. Who knew a TV series in 1966 was going
Yeah,
to have any legs, let alone me talking about it 60 years later. So Leonard says, "No, I'm not playing Spock. I'm not doing your stupid movie." So they hired Billy Van Zandt to be the new alien, and Billy was the new alien on the bridge. And they made this Ronda Wright makeup for him. And then they, for the scene, cast several, different headpieces from Billy's mold for several other Ronda Wrights. So you know the old story, Herc, about how it is to walk in someone else's shoes. You know that expression?
mm.
I had to walk in someone else's head. And Billy's head is a little different. His head is a little bigger than mine, and that doesn't, it just, we have different shaped heads. And because of that, it was a little loose, but it looked pretty damn good. And it was light. It's a foam, it's a spongy foam. And all the hairs on there are put in individually. I'll show you, folks, I'm talking about it. Why don't I just show the darn picture, Bob? Uh,
Yeah.
is it there? There you go. That's
That
Jimmy
is
Doohan
awesome,
and
though. That
Gracie
is so
Whitney, and
cool.
that's me. And that's
Very
what I looked
cool.
like as a Ronda crewman in Star Trek, the motion picture. And what happened was when you wear that makeup, and it's pretty comfortable, surprisingly comfortable, you actually don't know you have it on. And wasn't married yet, and you might figure there were some pretty good uh, thespian actresses on the set. You've seen the
Mhm.
movie. So during a break, I, sidle up to one and go, hey, how are you? I'm Steve. I'm from Freehold. And it's like they'd walk away from me. And it wasn't until I had to go do a 10-1. Folks, I'll teach you show business. When you're on set, you don't say, I have to pee because it just doesn't sound right. So if you have to, you tell the director, I need a 10-1, and everybody gets a 5-minute break. And I had to do a 10-1. By the way, if you ask for a 10-2, you can figure that out. Everybody gets a 20-minute break. 20 minutes, everyone. So I needed a 10-1. And I took a break and went to the washroom and passed the mirrors and then saw what I looked like and then realized why I wasn't the girl I was hitting on really wasn't interested in talking to me because I'm still looking out at the world with my eyes. And I don't
Sure.
feel any, really don't feel any different. The makeup was extremely comfortable, surprisingly comfortable. I wonder, I haven't had the newer makeup, things like the new Klingon makeup or the stuff that Doug Jones wears. uh, is pretty heavy duty. And I don't know. I know it takes hours to put it on. Mine took an hour and a half to 2 hours to put that on. And if you look at the picture again, they did something uh, that was new. So when you see the picture, if I'm holding it up, if you look really closely, first of all, there's no like when you see Saturday Night Live and they wear a bald wig, they put a quick rubber thing on and you see a line
Yeah.
across the part. That doesn't happen. In the Hollywood makeup, the makeup actually goes, the hair's covering it, but they cut off my sideburns completely. So it's glued in where your sideburns are. And then
Hmm.
and then it goes underneath your eyelids. I don't know if you can see a little,
Oh man.
you can see a little discoloration.
Oh
And then it
geez.
goes across the bridge of the nose,
Huh.
across underneath the other eyelid, and then around the side, to your sideburn. So you can't see that, but look at the little bump by the nose.
Yeah.
You can barely see.
All
Can you
these
see?
times I've seen this picture and I didn't. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
what happened after they made the movie and it was successful and they started making other ones? Fred Phillips and other makeup artists decided we got an idea how to hide that line because there was no way to hide that little line on the bridge. And that's why pretty much every Star Trek alien has a goofy nose because now the makeup is like mine. It goes around the sideburns, okay, underneath the eyelids, and then around your nose because it's a
Hmm.
plastic nose as part of that whole makeup. So
Wow.
you don't see the line here anymore because the nose is part of that and it just it hides it. It was a very clever idea. By the way, why do Star Trek aliens, Bob, have all humanoid bodies but just goofy heads?
We all come from the same. Remember that episode of Next Gen? We were all from the same genome or something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
They had to explain it logically,
Right.
but
I thought
we
I would
all know the real reason,
I thought I'd have you on
economics.
I thought I'd have you on the wires on that one, but I didn't. Um, real good on the ropes, I guess on the ropes. So the other thing I wanted to show that we talked about. I'm having so much fun here today, Bob. This is more relaxed than some of the previous ones when I had a lot of stuff to promote. And I am promoting, by the way, folks, you come out to that show and we will have these available, which and if you look at there's all kinds of Paramount Pictures, all of that stuff, and it's if you look closely there, that's the date that they took the picture that I filmed that scene. Can you see the date?
Oh,
It was Star Trek, October 17th, 1978. And the one
yeah.
means it was one of several pictures that they took. And I will have these to sign for you folks and talk about looking differently. Am I talking too much, Bob? So this is the back of the card. And there's yours truly, but
Mhm.
this is me in marijuana minutes, with the red suitcase. That's me in a film that's coming out, a Sam Borowski film, now being released to the film festivals very soon this year, and I'm playing an homage to John Travolta. We kind of think I was his nasty uncle from the Get Shorty movies. There's me as the old Groucho. This is after Groucho wore the big fat mustache and the movies in the 40s. When he was
Yeah,
when he was in later in life, that's what Groucho looked like. And
yeah.
my costumer nailed it. I had grown a mustache for Sam's movie for the bro ship.
Oh, that's
And what
great.
she did was she trimmed the mustache to look like Groucho's. And what else is there? There's a Boris Karloff kind of look. And my
Oh.
dad would be very proud. Where is that the Einstein? Is that where I can't see where's the Einstein? Einstein's on this side. Yeah, there's that's me
Oh
as
my
me.
gosh. Oh, wow.
That's me as Einstein. So, and the other film is Canned. Canned is available now, I think, on YouTube. And I play an old man that is in a yoga class, and I'm real proud of that role. Also, very proud of Marijuana Minutes. Marijuana Minutes. I do the voice of Trevor's mom, and Trevor is a dopey drug dealer. It's a Cheech and Chong send up, and he has a magic vape pen. So it's sci-fi comedy, and this girl gets this magic vape pen that every time she takes a hit on it, she goes back in time, however long the hit was. And at first it's an accident. And, her friend says, why don't you want some Chinese food? And she says, yeah, that's good. And then she takes a hit. I said, you want some Chinese food? She says, didn't you just say that? And she doesn't realize at first what's happening with this magic vape pen. And then when she does, she starts to use it to her advantage to redo things in job interviews, to change what she says wrong on a date, to go out with somebody. And it's hysterical. And I'm Trevor's
Oh.
mom. And you don't see me in the film. You do see me there, and that's an accident. And I'll tell you why you see me like that. In the whole film, when Trevor talks to his mom, all you see is, "Oh, Trevor, you're such a good boy. I love you so much. Here's the keys to the car." And I'm doing the mother's voice, and it's another hand, by the way. It's not my hand. And I did, "Oh, Trevor, I love you so much." And it's a Ryan Moore film, and it's great. And I'm real proud of that. So they called me on a Saturday or on a Tuesday. And Ryan Moore said, "Steve, what are you doing on Saturday?" And I said, "I don't know, rearranging my sock drawer." It's an old Johnny Carson line, but I love it. So I said, "You need more voices. I'll come back to the studio." And he said, "No, we have enough voices. The guy that's supposed to be the passenger in the Uber car got COVID. We shot this during COVID, the film, and we need a passenger. No one knows you, you're already on contract with the production, and you can do a different voice." So they dressed me like a hippie. That's a suitcase that I later hug in the film because she's driving like a mad woman. And I did my George Carlin, and I threw in an homage, folks. And you have to watch, and it's everywhere now. I mean, it was on Amazon for a year. Now it's streaming everywhere. Probably you can find it on YouTube. Your neighbor's phone probably has it on there now. But the film was really terrific, and I'm really really proud of having done that. And I played the character, and the line that I said, he- we weren't, there's this great thing that happens on the set sometimes. There are different scales of payment. If you're sitting in a church pew during a wedding, you get, $100. I'm just making up numbers, folks, by the way. I don't do that anymore, so I don't know what to know. And if you stand up and they move the camera in, you get a close up, you get more money. And if you have dialogue, they give you more money, all for being at the church
Yeah.
the same day, doing different things. So I was just supposed to be sitting in the back seat, and you'll see me at the beginning, just kind of looking out the window and just chilling out. And then they filmed the scene a couple times, and Ryan said, uh, "I think, I think I'd like you to say something." And he told the cabbie, Sophia Parola, who's playing the Clover, the character, and says, "Ask him where he's going." Now, there's no script on this. There's no dialogue. So he said, "Make something up." Well, one of the other shows that I truly love is the A Team. I'm sure you guys do too. I love the A Team.
Yeah.
Howling Mad Murdoch before he was Berkeley. But I love Barkley, right?
Yeah.
Right, he's Barkley, and they had an episode where they were going to Jakarta, and it stuck with me. I just always loved the sound of that place. So I said, okay, I'm going to be going to Jakarta to a Star Trek convention. So the line is, and I'm doing my George Carlin impression because it's a hippie movie, right? So this is what you folks have to listen to and filter when you listen to it, because there's something in acting known as the Meisner. Uh, the Meisner technique, Sandy Meisner taught a technique. When we have conversations, you can interrupt me, Bob, when we're talking and ask me a question. And Herc said earlier that he might interrupt and ask. I said, of course. That's the way conversations go. It's not always I go, you go, I go, you go.
Right.
Okay. So to do something to look realistic with the Meisner technique, as you're delivering a line before that next line comes in, you can interrupt that actor actress with your next line, and it's very natural. So Sophia is the penultimate actress. She's terrific. I love she's a great actor, but because of her technique and use of the Meisner technique, her question about where I was going, or not where I was going. She didn't care where I was going. Covered up the Star Trek line. I could have said I'm going to a I
Uh,
could have said I'm going to a Star Trek convention in Jakarta. No, Ryan loved the whole concept. He said that's a great Easter egg because he knows that I did Star Trek, and he said that's
yeah,
a great
yeah.
Easter egg. So I'll do the line, and this is what you have to listen to. But at the end of the line, as I'm saying Star Trek convention, she says, I don't care where you're going. And it's kind of over my voice. So you have to
Oh,
listen, you have to listen to it the way George Reeves did in that episode of The Adventures of Superman when they Jimmy Olsen recorded the diner where the
yeah.
criminals were talking, and then
Hmm.
somebody turned on the jukebox and you couldn't hear what the criminals were saying, and Clark Kent, listened on the phone like this, and then he could hear what the criminals were saying underneath the music and the noise in the diner. Pony's Diner, by the way. Adventures of Superman. You got to watch that. So if you do what Clark Kent did and listen very, very closely, you will hear this. So, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Jakarta, man, to a Star Trek convention. That was the line. But the Star Trek part gets a little bit muddled, but it's there, and I said it, and Ryan thought it was a great homage for me to be able to mention Star Trek in the film.
Oh,
It was very, very good.
absolutely. Yeah.
And now he is working on a new film. It's a science fiction comedy, and it's called Galaxy 4. And
Hmm.
I think it's on IMDb already. And I was watching the Facebook, and there's pictures of them on set having a good time. It's like, Ryan, what about who do we know that's in science fiction, Ryan? How come I'm not in this film? There wasn't a part for me. So Ryan called me one day and said there's a scene when people go into, I think it's an antique shop, and there's an old radio playing and an interview, like an NPR interview, and they're interviewing somebody. And he said, I'd like you to be one of these characters. We don't know which one. I know you do, like, 35 plus voices. So I went to the studio and I did 5 different voices. I did 3 voices as the interviewer and 2 voices as the person being interviewed. And I told Ryan I want to do both parts. But he had somebody that he liked to do one of the parts. And
Mhm.
that person will play the interviewer. And I'm going to be the person who's being interviewed in the film.
Mhm.
And thank you, Ryan Moore. I have all the funny lines. So I'm real happy. However, those lines are two, two lines. So why would I take a part? Not that I don't love Ryan Moore, but why would I take a role of 2 lines in a film? Because of somebody who I met and got very friendly with. He's a lovely man, Richard Kind. Do you know who Richard Kind is? He was on Murders in the Building, Only Murders in the Building. He's done a
Mm.
hundred million things. He's very funny and a lovely man. And he said, Steve, when I was asked to do that Larry David show, what was that Larry David show that he did after Seinfeld? I forget the name. Do you know, Bob? What?
Uh, After Seinfeld.
No, I don't remember. It was it
I
was
don't
that
either.
Larry did remember the name. It just escapes me.
Yeah.
Anyway, he said that he asked me to be on the show, Steve. I'm doing the Richard Kind voice. And he asked me to be on the show. And guess how much they paid me? How much they paid me to be on the pilot, on the first episode of that Larry David show. I says, I don't know, Richard, $2,000, $3,000? He said, no, they paid me $700. $700 to be on that
Oh,
show. But you know what? They, they like me, and I became a recurring regular. So, Stevie, take every pot. Take every pot that you get. So Ryan Moore says, I got 2 lines for you. I said, Ryan, I'm in. I'm in because of Richard
mhm.
Kind. And you never know where that's going to lead. I've done other films. I did a
Yeah,
movie,
absolutely.
Canned, the movie where I'm the old man, and I was just supposed to be this old man falling down in the background of the scene. And they dressed me as it's a great film. The film is hysterical. It's about canned laughter, and you have to watch it because you have to watch Marijuana Minutes and Canned because they're both hysterical. And after I figured I was going to get a half a day's work. We did this scene with me falling down. Something happens in a yoga class. and they're having us, do exercises, and I'm an old man. I fall down and somebody laughs, and that's the bit. And we did it 10 times. And they said, okay, break, lunch. Thank you guys. It was really fun. Thank Steve Malone, who directed and wrote it. I said, thank you. It was great. He says, no, I have some lunch. I said, no, no, you guys, I don't want to I never want to overstep my place on the set. If I'm supposed to work on something, I'll work. I'm very rarely in blooper reels. I'm not on the marijuana blooper reel because I don't fool around. Okay, if something happens by accident, you might see me in a blooper. And in canned, the blooper reel, which I don't know if it's online, they actually put in all 10 times that I fell down because somebody blew a line or they wanted it different, or I hit the wall once with my head. All 10 falls are in that Steve Malone. It was, the outtake reel that we saw, when we saw at the cast party. I don't know if it's released. I think he ought to if he's going to release it on DVD because the outtakes are very funny. Anyway, you don't see me, in the outtakes. But anyway, I'm going to go. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. You people are wonderful. And I started to leave. He said, "No, have some lunch." I said, "No, He said, "No, no, we want to use you after lunch and do some close-ups." And really, so
Ah,
what I thought was going to be a half a day wound up being a whole day's work, and I got I don't know if it's a close up, but it's I would call it a medium shot, which is not bad.
yeah.
Where is it? I can't find me. Oh, there I am. Okay.
Hmm.
That's pretty good. That's
Yeah.
pretty good for a guy that just wants to fall down for a couple hours. And
Yeah.
and I'm
Absolutely.
I thank Ryan and for introducing me to Steve. And Steve, thank you for putting me in the film. And I love, if you can't tell, Bob, I love what I do. I mean, I get
Do, and
to
that's the
play all
passion. It's
I
it's
get to
more
play all
than
day. It's
now,
just
Steve. Something
really,
I've been wanting to ask you
yeah,
beyond your appearance in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. If you had the opportunity to be in any of the Star Trek, we'll focus on the movies for now. Um, any of the Star Trek movies from either the original series of movies or the next gen version or even the J.J. Abrams one, what what would you want to, which one would you want to be in and what role? I mean, not an established role, but I mean
yeah.
your own role. What would because you got to have your own character in motion picture. What would you Where would you love to have found yourself in a spot within any of the Star Trek movies?
That's a really, really interesting question, and I have a nice answer. But you said leave it to the films because really I love doing voices, as you can tell. And
Yeah.
I would really like to, and I got to talk to the agents because I really would love to do a voice for one of the animated things.
Yeah.
And okay, that's what
Oh,
I
yeah.
so
Very
so
good.
I so as for being Stephen Lance on camera, I love doing the voice for Ryan Moore off camera. And it was
Mhm.
only because he put me on camera that I started taking on camera roles. And that the whole on camera role thing is all because of Marijuana Minutes and somebody getting COVID. And I don't know who you are, but God bless you. I hope you're well, and thanks for getting sick because my whole career started. So the movie would have to be Star Trek. I guess the Voyage Home. I guess it would be the
Okay.
Voyage Home, and and I don't know what part. I don't know even if I would want to be. I might have wanted to be like a Klingon in that one, as
Hmm.
opposed to a Star Trek crew member. But I love the story about the whales, and that's the one, right? Voyage Home is the whales,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
and it was
John,
written.
yeah, John
What,
sh sh from Macmillan and wife, John was the ambassador. Why can't I remember his
right.
Hercules? You probably know. I don't want to mispronounce his name, but with an S. He played
Shuck.
because he
John
had
Shuck.
such a great voice as the ambassador, and he was, you know,
I don't
upset
remember
with
who.
Kirk and all that. So,
Yeah, I don't remember who played Ambassador, but what I want to say was
mm,
that movie was was based on a book, a Star Trek novel. Another dear friend who I met years ago at Star Trek conventions, and we became friends because we were pretty much the same age. And
Hmm.
he wrote the episode, sent in a script for one of the original animated series, The Pirates of Orion, which is a great
Hmm.
episode. And Howard Weinstein, Howie, wrote this script and then came to all the conventions and showed the episode and talked about it. And he wrote after that, he wrote, look through your Star Trek comic books, folks, and you will see
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of them. Howard
Hmm.
Weinstein, novels, Star
Yeah.
Trek novels, Howard Weinstein, and the novel, one of them was called Deep Domain, which was about the whales. And that's where they kind of based the story on Howie's book. And at the very he says you got to stay, Steve, to the end of the film, as the crawl is coming. It's called the crawl, folks, when the credits go up the screen and you see that. He says near the very end it says, special thanks to Howard Weinstein, because he had written Deep Domain. And he wrote to me a letter, and how he said, uh, my goal, Steve, is to have to keep doing this and to have my name bigger and closer to the top. I've never forgotten that he said that. And that's the goal. So he wrote this book that became the Star Trek movie. So I'd love to be in his film. So there's another connection there that I would have been in Howie's movie, really, because it's based on his story. I love that film. My favorite line in the film. Do you have a favorite line from the film?
Oh, there's so many.
My favorite line is when he's talking to the marine biologist, and he says, "You you're from outer space." And Bill Shatner goes, "No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in outer space."
Only work in space.
And
That's a
that is my
classic.
favorite line in that
And the
film.
nuclear vessels, that one, that.
Yeah, the nuclear West. Can you tell me what the nuclear vessels are? Walter was also just wonderful in the old convention days. Stories that he would get up on stage and very interesting. And I'm not talking out of class. I guess no one's going to sue me after 60 years. Walter was, I think, the voice of, I'm glad he was wrong, and I'll tell you the story, but he was the voice of reason. Here's what happened. At every Star Trek convention, there would be somebody, one of the actors, one of the people that worked on the sets, somebody associated with the film would go, and yeah, and Roddenberry's trying to make a Star Trek film, and we're going to bring Star Trek back to television, and it's going to be a 90-minute show like Columbo. Or, hey, we're going to make a new Star Trek series, or we're going to make a Star Trek movie. And everyone's, yeah, yeah. And of course, it wasn't happening in 1975, 76, 77. And Walter would get up on stage to, answer questions and, talk about playing Chekhov. And he would say, look, he says, the show was in 1966. It's now, 1970, 77. And he said, it's not going to happen. We have to move on with our lives and our careers. And he was very logical, and he was not a Vulcan, but he was, to find another word, I can't. And Walter used to say, look, it was a great show, it was a great series for what we did, but it's time to move on. And the fact that they actually sold the film because of my work in Star Trek conventions and making Paramount understand that there was an audience out there. I'm not taking full credit, folks. I'm kidding a little, but I did play an integral part. Had I not hosted those shows and not had thousands of fans come out, I mean, I was on stage, Bob, with 10,000 people in an audience, and that proved to the suits, they call them in Hollywood, that there was money out there that people would pay to go see a Star Trek film. So I'm very, I take umbrage that I had a part in it, a big part in keeping Star Trek alive. So the fact that they made the movies and Walter got to be in all the movies, uh, just terrific. But he was at the time what I always thought was the voice of reason. Like, folks, it's a lot of fun. We love these conventions. It's an old TV show. It's not going to happen. Who would really have ever guessed that it did? Who would guess, Bob, that I started
Yeah.
I did my comedy routine, the If We, which I'll promote in a minute. That, by the way, folks. That's what I looked like when I sat in Freddie Phillips' chair. That's what I looked like. Okay,
Wow.
with the long hair and the mustache. and they cut my hair off and they cut the mustache. And by the way, when they put the cake makeup on, talk about sting. Oh, let me tell you. I mean, it wasn't like when you'd shave it home. It was like zzz, 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 and the mustache was gone. And then they put the cake makeup on and talk about pain. Okay, the pain you go through to be an actor. That cake makeup stung, and I remember that. So that's me doing the if we. That's William Shatner going if we. And this folks is everywhere now. It's on Spotify. It's on iHeart Music. I think it's on YouTube even. I don't like saying YouTube because it like a 6-year-old can put a song on YouTube, you know. So I actually have a distributor, Bob. Okay, my thing's on iHeart Music. I'm on Spotify, and yeah, they put it on YouTube. But you can watch it anywhere. And I don't know that I get. I think I get 1/100th of a cent if you listen to it, and if you buy it for like 99 cents, I get 3 cents. So I'm saving up. I'm saving up for a McDonald's hamburger. So please go ahead. But it's very funny, and this is the routine. If you want to know where Stephen Lance came from, and you want to listen to Star Trek and all the impressions, uh, listen to this. You'll laugh. And side two, you don't have to turn your phone over if you listen on your phone. It just comes on. Is I talk about my English teacher and my mom, just topical humor. And I'm real proud of those routines. Uncle Floyd, God bless him, used to play that
Oh,
on
Uncle
his
Floyd.
Uncle Floyd, he was one of the first
Yeah.
people I ever worked for on his TV show when I was still in college. And he used to play side two all the time. And when we did this, I said, it's 1975, and even though they cleaned up the 45 RPM in vinyl, I said, let's go back into the music library, the sound effects library, and we found scratches and needle drops and clicks and pops, and so the record sounds like you're listening to it in 1975 with clicks and pops and I thought that would be really fun to do. So
Yeah.
it's the nostalgia of it, and the nicest thing. I don't know if you can read this. I will read this to you. I needed a quote for the record. Can you see it in the little box there? Can you
Yeah, just
see the
barely.
name? Can
Okay.
you see the name,
Hmm.
Bob?
Oh, there it's kind of
Yeah, it's Susan Sackett.
oh, it's Susan's okay.
So said Steve, I'd be glad to do this for you, and I can never thank her enough. She wrote classic Stephen Heesh Lance. Funny with spot-on impersonations of Star Trek TOS actors, especially Shatner, Kirk, and Takei Sulu. Susan Sackett, Star Trek, uh, uh, Susan Sackett, the executive assistant to Gene Roddenberry. That's what it says on the record.
Oh, wow.
So that's really special. And I thank you, Susan, for doing that. Please, folks, type in if we Stephen, it should come up with Stephen Lance, because it says Stephen Lance, but it says in small letters as Heesh. So if you have trouble finding it, type in if we by Heesh and enjoy it. And I think you'll really like the English class, and you'll like the my mother's thing. So that's my first. So I'm a recording artist. If you consider that I had a 45 RPM back in the Star Trek days. And I'll have, by the way, folks, at Bob's show, the Star Trek, I have one box left, like 25 of those records, and I will bring that box out, and we're not going to give them away. But if you're interested,
Yeah.
we can dicker about it, and I'll sign it. And I have the original 1975 45 RPM vinyls
Wow.
of that record, and I don't know if I ever gave you one, Bob. If I didn't, I'll give you one. And
That's
that's it.
cool. I look forward to that. I still have a 45 player somewhere. I kept my
Good.
45s. Oh, we're actually getting close to the to the wrap up time.
Getting close to wrap up. So what
Yeah.
ask me Star Trek questions, and I want to talk about my country song.
Okay.
So did you like my answer? But I'd like to be in the voyage home. That's good. Good answer.
Yeah. Okay. I can picture that. And I know your voice would be fantastic for any of the anime, like the original Star Trek animated
Yeah.
series, which I th still think from Filmation, I still think that was the best of
It
all.
was the best. And because of that, And because, I was a kid trying to get into the business and wanted to do voices, James Doohan,
Mhm.
actually taught me how to act for animation, which is
Yeah, because he
different,
did several voices. He did
which is
Lieutenant
different kind
Eric's.
of acting than when you're doing it on
Yeah.
stage or on film. So a lot of what I do now when I do voice work, which included marijuana minutes, and it will again when I do the Galaxy 4, is are tips about how to use your voice when you don't see your face and you're playing another character. Filmation, just a side note, it was really terrific that they got all the almost all the actors.
Except for
Not getting,
Walter, but Walter got to write an episode. He
yeah,
didn't
he
get
got the right, but it was not right. And even a funnier story, because they wanted to save money.
yes.
So they they
Well,
they, they cut.
they almost didn't have Nurse was it Nurse Majel Barrett or Nichelle Nichols and Jay I know Leonard Nimoy stepped up and said, no, we have to have everybody.
Yeah, what they do, and the fact that they cut Walter out was not nice. And I'm writing my memoir now about Star Trek,
Yeah.
and there's a story that Jimmy told me that I'll share
Mhm.
with you folks, and don't go telling anyone. In the union, okay, the Screen Actors Guild, now the Screen Actor AFTRA, SA SAG-AFTRA. Uh, the rule is if you're playing a part in a movie, you get your salary. If you're playing yourself and the evil twin, you're going to get more money to negotiate because you're playing two parts. But when you go to do a voice for animation, you actually, by contract, by the union rules, have to do up to three different voices.
Really?
And that is set in stone. There are exceptions because Shatner only did Kirk, and Nimoy only did Spock, and Nichelle only did Uhura, and D, of course. But Jimmy Doohan played Scotty. And because of that rule, Jimmy Doohan was also usually the alien of the week. So when you
Yes.
listen to those shows, Scotty is James Doohan, and the alien of the week, uh, Winston Carter. By the way, my favorite episode of that series, besides
Mhm.
Howie. Okay, Howie, I love your show. But the second favorite, okay, second favorite is the one when Winston Carter. Remember Carter
Mhm. Yeah.
Winston, Winston Carter.
Yeah, I
It was
forgot
Winston.
that.
I think it was
Wasn't that
Winston.
Ted Knight or
I don't remember who did it. No, that
no?
was James Doohan also.
Okay.
So now he played Scotty, Winston Carter, and I think he was Mr. Eric's. He was Mr. Eric's.
Yes, he was
Okay,
Lieutenant
so
Eric's, the
there's
three-armed.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's and it's, Captain. And so Jimmy had those are the three voices: Mr. Eric's, Scotty, and then he would look to do the alien of the week, usually whoever the
Yeah.
was, and he did that voice. Now, here's what happens. You can't do four voices for that same salary. They have to pay you another salary if you do another voice. And you would have to do three more voices. But the chances of there being six voices that they
Yeah.
need,
Yeah.
it's not happening. So Jimmy said I'd get the scripts a week, 2 weeks ahead of time, and I'd study the scripts and look for a character and try to pitch a fourth character. And sometimes there was a fourth character that he could do another voice for. And Jimmy got two salaries, even though he did four voices.
Hmm.
Scotty, Eric's, the alien of the week, and then now another character. And he got two salaries.
Wow.
He did four voices. And with all of that, and as much as I love James doing and everything he's taught me, Paramount probably could have figured out a way to have Walter
Yeah.
in the show. One last thing about Filmation is the Lone Ranger episodes. I love the Lone Ranger. I was friends with Clayton Moore, and my costume for my country stuff is based on Clayton Moore. They were going to do those Lone Ranger episodes with Clayton Moore and Jay Silverheels, and Clayton Moore wrongly, I say, Clay wanted money, and I knew him. Clayton Moore wanted more money for rehearsal time for the animation, and
Uh,
and Filmation
that would
couldn't
have been great.
and
But they did
Filmation.
do
So
William Conrad, I know, but
right. So the
uh,
Lone Ranger cartoons by Filmation, because that's what Filmation was doing. They really wanted to have Clayton Moore and Jay
yeah,
So and Jay would have done it, but Clay gummed up those.
just like Henry Darrow ended up being Zorro, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I told you. You
Yeah,
know about my friend Henry. We'll do
yeah.
that. We'll Hank, God bless you wherever you are, my friend. We'll talk
Yeah.
about Henry Darrow. But Henry was the other person who talked to me about how to learn to do voices for animation. And he said what Hank said was that you have to be very big on animation because you only have your voice. And it was
Real
like,
quick,
yeah,
real quick, because Hercules is giving me the cue. Tell me
okay.
a little bit about your country country your new
Yes,
endeavor with singing.
my new endeavor. So I'm in the studio one day doing a regular voice. And as I'm finishing up in the little booth, looking through the window, I see guys coming in with equipment and beards and tattoos, and I go to the microphone, in the vocal booth and go, what's going on? Hey, what's cool? He said, oh, they're gonna come in and cut a record, and I go, I've always wanted to cut a record, and I don't mean the Star Trek comedy record. I mean,
Yeah,
I wanted to be on
yeah.
WABC radio doing a song, and I wanted to do a song. And I said, the problem is I can't sing. So afterwards, I had lunch with Rudy Meyer, my producer, and he said, do you like country music? I said, yeah, I knew Johnny Cash and June Carter a little bit. I had done some shows with them, and I liked their stuff, and I listened to some country, but not all the time. I listened to the Archies mostly. Um, no, sugar, sugar,
Okay.
whatever. Anyway, so he
Quick.
said there are country songs that are storytelling songs. Now, every country song tells a story, of course, but there are songs where there's no singing and you actually narrate the song. And I had done this country voice. He was called the country music star because I was a country music star and I did this commercial for a restaurant in Maryland, and that was a character that I created. And I
Okay.
said, you know what? If I can do a song with just narration in that character, and I rehearsed the character. I have a vocal coach, a dialect coach, Cowboy Rick Burns, and Cowboy Rick made sure that the voice was accurate and not too southern and not fake. And I recorded a song from 1969 by Red Sovine. It's a real
Okay, we
song,
got 2 minutes, so wrap it up.
real
Okay.
song. It's called Phantom 309. And
Okay, that's and you're
it,
going to be bringing that to our program on
well,
August
we
30th.
can, but it's on Spotify. I think it's on YouTube again, folks, but it's not
Okay.
everywhere. And you have to look up Lance Stevens because I changed my name around to be the country music star. There I am.
Oh, that
Okay.
sounds great.
So at the
Awesome.
beginning of the record, it's like when I was 15 or 16, I went out west trying to
Okay,
be a cowpoke, you know?
Lance Stevens.
Yeah, last thing, I went out to try to be a cowpoke and it didn't work out, and I hitched back and a trucker picked me up. And the whole story is about this truck, the
Yeah.
interaction between the guy to get picked up and the trucker. Listen to that Phantom 309, please. I'm really,
Okay,
really proud of it. And they liked it so much. I'm actually in the studio doing four more. We're on the way to an album, Bob. I
that
got
is
four
cool.
songs. So
Well,
that's that.
here
I will be
we
out there. Oh,
here we
wait,
are
Bob.
wrapping.
What
Kind of
I'm not,
ironic because we start off with Star Trek 60 it being the wagon train to the stars, and here we are with Steve's new country career here.
yeah, I wanted to say when we come out there, the show, I'm not going to be on the boardwalk. I have an 8-foot backdrop, folks.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Right, with Bob's seen it. It's an eight
Yeah,
foot backdrop with the Star Trek transporter unit. So you can and I have little stickers you can wear and that have the
awesome.
insignia. So you can pose in front of the Star Trek transporter
Excellent.
unit. I'll pose with you, and we'll that's what I wanted them to know. It's gonna be a lot of fun out there
Excellent.
on the
Excellent.
30th.
Oh,
Okay, now I'm done. Thank you, Bob. I didn't want to get I wanted to stop.
thank you for joining us. And just wanted to mention, I dug out of mothballs this T-shirt from Star Trek 3, which by at the time, because it's got the wrong date, 1983, and it's called In Search of Spock. This is an old T-shirt that obviously came out in advance. Uh, I probably picked it up at a
Wow.
con. Haven't worn it in literally decades. I'm glad it was actually still extra large and I can still fit in it. But I thought it was nostalgic, so I thought it was appropriate.
It's
So
wonderful. It's
big
wonderful.
Paramount, you know.
I know I'm real proud of the fact that on the I got the Paramount on my hip.
Yeah. Yeah,
there's the
there's
logo there.
that mountain.
Same. There we are.
Yep, there we
We're brothers. We're twins. We're twins. You say when you're
Thank
Oh,
you both for a wonderful show. The tonight's show will be up by midnight tonight, and it's called Celebrating 60 Years of Star Trek with Stephen Land.
all righty. Thanks again to both of you, my good friends.
Be well and great success in all your endeavors to both of you.
Thank you very much, Herc, and live long and prosper.
You as well, my friend.